candidates for the Republican nomination for the Congressional District 2 seat, with candidates Marlinda Garcia, Gary Lambert, and Jim Lawrence. Thursday will be here at 6 for the debate between candidates for the Republican nomination for the United States Senate. With 6 of 8 candidates confirmed, it should be an interesting evening, so we hope you'll join us. The candidates participating are Robert Darcy, Mark Farnham, Bob Kegman, Walt Kelly, Andy Martin, and Bob Smith. Tonight, asking questions of the candidates, we have Ben Conan, editor of the Monadnock Legend Transcript, Sarah Palermo, reporter with the Company Author, and Derek Scalia from Franklin Pierce University. Moderating tonight's event is J.R. Davis, an attorney with the King Law Firm, an experienced debate moderator, having served that role in our 2012 New Hampshire State Senate debate and last week in our GOC gubernatorial debate. Special thanks to Kristen Nebius from Franklin Pierce University for organizing tonight's events and putting together all the details that make it successful. It's important to note that the Monadnock debate series is distinct from others in the state, in that we've invited all candidates, regardless of their standing in the polls, and made a commitment to ask all candidates the same questions. The Monadnock Legend Transcript has co-sponsored political debates with Franklin Pierce University since the 2010 election cycle. As a state newspaper, we want to engage voters in the political process and provide access to the information they need to make informed, responsible choices. This debate format offers Monadnock region residents an opportunity to participate in formulating the questions, to hear the candidates' responses, and to weigh in on how they did. We welcome your comments in the next few days as letters to the editor. Please submit them to news@legendtranscript.com and just note the debate in the subject line. Running for office at any level requires an exceptional commitment to serving the public and to the ideals of democracy. We want to thank the candidates and thank you for participating in the process. Please join me in welcoming J.R. Davis, who will introduce the candidates.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to introduce on behalf of the 2nd Congressional Republican candidates for the upcoming primary tonight, Marlinda Garcia, Gary Lambert, and Jim Lawrence. Our format tonight will be a series of questions. I will announce at the beginning of each question. Back row, can you hear me? No? Our format tonight will be, okay, now, candidates, can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. Okay, well, we'll see what we can do about changing that in a moment. Our format will be, at the beginning of each question, I will announce the amount of time. I will not be draconian about it, but I generally expect whenever I announce that the time is open, that someone will finish their sentence without necessarily the use of semicolons, colons, and parenthetical expressions. And there will be follow-up questions, and again, with those, we'll announce the time. I will attempt, with no promises made, to vary the order that people answer their questions. There will be no openings, so we get the maximum number of questions in. But each candidate will have the opportunity to have the closing in order to be determined on our whim whenever we get to that time tonight. If towards the end of the debate you see me fiddling with my watch even more, that's because I'm just trying to figure out if I have enough time to get enough questions or not, because I did promise the candidates that they will each have the ability to have 3 minute closing should they choose to. With that in mind, our first question tonight will be asked by Sarah, and this will be a 2-minute response. Sarah.
We've all seen the discord in Washington, and we know that one party can't accomplish very much on their own these days. If you're elected, is advocating for repeal or dismantlement of the Affordable Care Act worth burning hopes of bipartisan agreement on other issues?
Candidates, did you hear the question?
Yes.
No, we're already better than last time. Mayor Linda, if you would answer first, 2 minutes.
Thank you for the question, sir. I think it's important to advocate for what I've been using as an operational term, dismantling Obamacare, because I disagree with the overarching premise of the law, and that is that we're putting in place a federal structure that reaches across our country from New Hampshire to California, centralizes control of the federal government, and doesn't allow us as a unique state with unique challenges and unique problems to find targeted reforms and solutions and enact those. So I think there are many areas within healthcare reform that in fact I would love to work on, and I believe there is a lot of bipartisan support for. There are in fact even parts of the Affordable Care Act that I have publicly said are good. For example, in this economic circumstance we have right now, coverage being extended to those up to the age of 26 makes a lot of sense. Coverage for those with pre-existing conditions makes a lot of sense. Being moved to electronic medical records was important. But the basis that this is federal control of 1/6 of our economy, it prevents flexibility, it prevents adaptability, and will frankly move us more towards what we see going wrong with the VA, instead of moving us towards a more innovative, consumer-oriented approach that I've been advocating for. So as it stands, I don't see this as a broad, successive reform. I would like to advocate for more specific targeted reforms that don't also impose an individual mandate. That would be, starting off, $95 per person, go up to $800 in the next 3 years. That is removing Medicare Advantage coverage from seniors, cutting that by $2,400. An employer mandate that's leading to job losses everywhere. I talk to business owners across the state with a big problem. So that's why I advocate for dismantling, but would love to work on bipartisan fashion for those other reforms.
Thank you. Same question to Gary, please.
Thank you very much. Senator, wherever I go in the 2nd Congressional District, I hear 2 things. The cost of Obamacare and the cost of health is going up. And it's going up through high deductibles, higher premiums, and everything that's happening is access is going down. Just in Nashville, we have 2 hospitals. One is in the network, one is out of the network. Nashville's not too bad because, of course, those hospitals are close together, but the farther you get up north, you've got hospitals out of the system where people have to travel twice as far to get the health care they deserve and the health care they want and get to the doctor to where they want. I think we can repeal Obamacare and come up with some free market alternatives. There's no reason we can't buy health insurance across state lines just like we do car insurance. We need to do that. We need to encourage health savings accounts. And I got to tell you, we've got to take on, as a lawyer, I think I'm well qualified to do this, frivolous lawsuits. All those bring up the cost of health care, and if we can bring that down and deal with those free market alternatives, we'll drive down the cost of health care, we'll be able to repeal Obamacare, and we'll get people the doctor that they want at the hospital that they want to go to.
Thank you.
Can you just address the part of that question, if that's worth burning bridges to bipartisan, being able to work bipartisanly going forward?
I'm not burning any bridges. I'm not going down to burn bridges. I'm going down to establish a coalition, to work together. Is there any reason, I haven't heard a good explanation yet why we can't buy health insurance across state lines. We all know it will drive down costs. We know it will increase folks getting the access to health care that they want. And to me, that's a bipartisan thing. I believe working together toward those goals. You got to remember, Obamacare did not get one single Republican vote. Where was the bipartisanship of Obamacare? It wasn't there. I think the things that I've laid out are bipartisan in nature, and I think we can come together and have a plan that everybody will like.
Thank you. Jim, 2 minutes. Same question.
One of the things that I find fascinating is as I travel all over the state, whether people were for Obamacare before or they were opposed to it, by far the majority of the people I talk to are against it now. They're against it because it didn't do what it said it was going to do. They were promised they were going to get to keep their health care providers, their doctors, and they can't. They were told it was going to be cheaper and more affordable, and it's not. The other day I was up in Bethlehem, and I was talking to Peter, and Peter told me, he said, my daughter lost the ability to see the specialist that she was seeing. And she's left the country now to get the health care that she needed because of Obamacare. Obamacare hurt the citizens of this state, whether they were Democrats or Republicans, whether they supported it or were against it. The narrow network that was created by Obamacare robbed people of their options. There's a county in this state that no one can go to a single health care provider or hospital and be covered under Obamacare. That's not America. And I would fight to support the aims and the goals of the people of this state, regardless of party lines.
Mr. Lawrence, which county is that?
That would be Sullivan County.
And I'm sorry, I also want to just redirect us, as Ben did with Senator Lambert. Is what you're advocating worth avoiding potential compromises on other issues that might be important to you, on which you would need support from the Democrats who support the Affordable Care Act?
Look, if I'm elected to go to Washington, I'm going to be fighting for the people of New Hampshire, and I'm willing to build a coalition with anyone who will join me in fighting for the things that are in the best interest of the people. I believe right now, based on everything that I've heard across the state, that this is no longer a bipartisan issue. It's just wrong for this state, and it's wrong for America.
Thank you very much. The follow-up question will be 1 minute.
In the next term of Congress, changes may be proposed to the Affordable Care Act concerning a woman's access to birth control. What changes would you support?
Jim will give you 1 minute on that, please.
Okay. As I said earlier, I'm for repealing Obamacare. You know, I'm a small business owner, and in my small business, I had to make decisions to provide health care for my employees. I provided the best health care provider. And if I'm elected to Congress, I will not attempt to alter the type of health care that the citizens receive. I will try and provide the most affordable and the most affordable options of health care to all citizens of the state.
Thank you. Gary, 1 minute.
Sarah, you might be referring to the Hobby Lobby decision in respect of what Congress might do with respect to that. And there's no reason we can't get women the health care that they want and deserve outside of that decision. It's been done with Obamacare, it's been done with churches, and there's no reason we can't do a workaround on that to get women the health care they deserve.
Marilyn, 1 minute, same question.
I know there's actually a bipartisan bill that has been talked about and I believe will be coming through either the Senate or the House related to the availability of birth control over the counter. I think that would be a great move, especially because if Obamacare continues along the way it's going unfettered, that will lead to rationing, that will lead to a lack of medical providers in an area where PCPs are already hard pressed to be able to be seeing all the patients that demand their attention. So I think that's a really important move they're making, and that's certainly something I would support.
Thank you. Gary, are you doing the next question, please? This next question, I think, will do answers of 1.5 minutes each.
With the rise in heroin usage within the area, how would you address this growing epidemic?
Gary, 1.5 minutes.
Well, first of all, to me, that's it's a state issue, and it's also a local issue. So, there's certain things I believe the government needs to be involved in, and I think localities can do it best, and it's up to localities like the city of Nashua, the mayor, the police, all of them to work together to find out what they need, what resources they need. Then if they need more resources, they need to go to the state. And the state needs to get involved where appropriate, but I believe it's a state and local issue with respect to that problem. We've got a big problem in Nashville, there's no doubt about it. It's a great problem, and the locality, the city of Nashville is dealing with it.
Thank you very much. 1 minute, Jim.
I agree that heroin epidemic is a big issue that we're all facing right now. I'm a proud parent of 8 children, and one of the reasons why I'm running for Congress is because I'm fearful for their future. I'm fearful for their future for a number of reasons, but the drug situation that we see growing, particularly with heroin, is very dangerous to our communities and dangerous to our society. So my pledge, if I'm elected to be your congressman, I will support the local authorities as much as possible to help address this issue, whether it be more law enforcement or education to help our children be safe from this epidemic and this menace.
Marilyn, we want to have.
Unfortunately, there are a lot of substance abuse problems that our youth are facing, and frankly, the population at large. And as with other considerations, such as a lot of changes they're looking at when it comes to marijuana policy in different states, as well as the war on drugs in general, what has been its effectiveness. I think it's important that we look to what the root cause is of this epidemic, and then understand, what the industry is behind it, who is responsible for the proliferation and who's selling it, and just making sure that we're supporting law enforcement in all means available, and that they can do their work in effective ways, but that we also look to, frankly, our social fabric and try to be sure that young people aren't turning to things like heroin when perhaps they're missing something in another aspect of life. Maybe we can fill that in community support, strong families and other things like that.
Thank you. Then you have the next question? I think this is a 3-minute question. Go ahead.
When is it appropriate for the United States to intervene in foreign conflicts? And what would your approach be to managing the current foreign conflicts that we're facing on the global level? Do you support sending troops to Iraq to combat ISIS?
Again, that will be 3 minutes, and Jim, you'll go first this time.
Okay. ISIS is the biggest threat to the United States interests currently emerging in the world right now. President Barack Obama, with his failed foreign policy, has put us in a position now where we're backed up against the wall and we're trying to defend our interests and protect our citizens from a growing terrorist threat in Iraq. I believe that the president made the right decision, although too late, to bring airstrikes, to use air power to help try to stop ISIS. Because without stopping them, without the United States intervening, there would be no stopping ISIS. However, I would not support putting boots on the ground right now.
Same question to Gary.
Well, as you may know, I've served in Iraq. I was in Iraq in 2004. It was a very difficult time. We were just giving the country back. I have a 35-year career in the Marine Corps, just retired 2 months ago. Also have a master's degree in strategic studies from the Army War College, so I feel qualified to give an opinion on that. First of all, to answer your specific question, they cannot be any boots on the ground in Iraq, period. We were there. I was one of those boots in Iraq. We can't stand anymore. We've done enough. And that's the 2 guiding principles that this president does not seem to want to follow in the national security affairs throughout the world. Number 1, you only intervene if 2 things are happening. The lives of Americans are in jeopardy, and the national security interests of the United States are involved. And other than that, I do not believe in getting involved, and I only, first of all, certainly do not believe in getting involved with boots on the ground under any circumstances.
Thank you very much. Derek, I believe you have the next question. Oh, come on. Sorry, Marilyn. You worried about the time. Again, 3 minutes on that.
In fact, I believe the situation in Iraq lends itself strongly to our national security interests. In fact, one of the problems with the administration's handling of this is that after what is widely considered to be a successful surge, experts said that in fact having the presence of troops left on the ground in Iraq to be a stabilizing force was very important. But the president had a commitment, I believe motivated, for political reasons, to withdraw every American, sure that it was done in a timeline that he announced to the world. And I think that put us in an unstable situation, because even as soon as last November, when he was asked questions about the potential threat of ISIS taking over that area in Syria and Iraq and expanding in its aim of achieving an Islamic caliphate over the globe, he just kind of brushed it off sarcastically, saying, you know, if a JV team puts on Lakers uniforms, that doesn't make them Kobe Bryant. Now, fast forward, we had a huge crisis where, in fact, I think we did fulfill what was an important moral obligation to help the Yazidis trapped on Mount Sinjar. I think that was extremely important. I'm really proud we did that. But unfortunately, experts now today are saying that due to the completely unmanageable situation there, where ISIS has seized troops we provided to the Iraqis, they seized oil fields, they have billions of dollars. They're one of the richest terrorist organizations in the history of terrorism, basically. That in fact we may have to consider, bringing troops back, and that would be really unfortunate. It's not what we want, but I think at this point all things are going to be considered, and that's because we did not have clear leadership about our role in the world and our role and responsibility in that region.
Thank you very much. Gary?
It was recently reported that the United States will spend $400 billion for the F-35 fighter jets. This is 42% higher than the 2007 estimate. However, it was argued that the F-35 is a required expense for the U.S. to keep up with an arms race with China and Russia. With this in mind, what is your opinion of the U.S. defense budget?
That'll be a 2-minute response, and Marilyn, if you would kind of
A strong military and a strong economy are, I think, one of the things that the U.S. has to ensure we have to have stability at home and abroad. We are in a world where between the threat we just talked about, international terrorism, the rise of great power rivalries, again, with Russia and China, and with the possibility of a nuclear Iran that they are actively pursuing. It's very important that we be the best equipped military and strongest in the world. I think that's crucial right now going forward. And, I believe in, as recently as 50 years ago, the ratio of spending to defense versus entitlements, it used to be quite higher, I believe 30% higher than what it is now. So we've seen a complete shift in what we spend and direct our resources to, and at a time when, again, it's so important that we have a strong military. I think all of these spending items, while of course we need to be sure we're being good stewards of the American taxpayer resources, we also have to understand that as elected officials, our primary responsibility is being sure that America is safe.
Thank you. Same question, 2 minutes to Gary.
Tell you what, if you mentioned the questions on the U.S. defense budget, I tell you what the priority of the U.S. defense budget should be: personnel. And a lot of people, a lot of bureaucrats, a lot of career politicians down in Washington, D.C. don't seem to understand that. They're more worried about where that F-35 is made, rather than the guy with boots on the ground in Afghanistan or anywhere else in this world. So that's our first priority. We've got to take care of our people. The Veterans Administration is a clear example of not taking care of our people when we need to. And I got to tell you, like I said, I've been serving for most of my life. I can tell you, we've got troops on food stamps. There's the budget, there's the priority in the defense budget right there, getting them off of food stamps. And so, the F-35, we can make those things, we can crank those out if we have them in 6 months speed, right? It takes a long time to build a Marine or a soldier that knows what he's doing out on the battlefield when he can be. And so that's my priority when I go out there, go down to Washington if elected. Take out the crony capitalism, take out the career politicians who are worried about getting re-elected, worried about the troops. That's what needs to be done with the defense budget.
Thank you very much. Same question, 2 minutes to Jerry.
Being an Air Force veteran who graduated the United States Air Force Academy, plus 15 years plus of experience dealing with Department of Defense programs like the Joint Strike Fighter F-35. I have to differ with my colleague a little bit on this, because many of us may not remember, but the F-35 was supposed to be the replacement for the F-22, which we cut to make savings for the Department of Defense. Now, we can cut the Department of Defense, but it's important for us to maintain a balanced force structure. And without an air superiority aircraft in the inventory, we will not be able to compete with the other foreign nations that we need to defend the United States interests against. So, we do need to balance the budget. We do need to fight to cut spending everywhere we can, but we need to weigh that against the cost of potential American lives because our fighting forces don't have the equipment that they need to win.
Thank you. Before we go to the next question, I just want to do a follow-up on the issue of defense spending. Do you think that the overall total amount of existing defense spending by Congress is appropriate? If so, why? And if not, how much should be either increased or cost? Maybe increased or decreased? And Gary, I'll give you the opportunity to respond to that. I would say, then I'll be
Yeah, here's the thing, I'll go back to my last answer. We need to take care of our troops. So if we've got folks that can't make it around food stamps or whatever, then we need to make sure the assets go to them. Now, whether we take it away from someplace else or we add to it is kind of, quite frankly, irrelevant to me. But that's what we need to do. And I got to tell you, we've got to make sure we keep a strong defense because there are a lot of bad people out there that want to do a lot of bad things to us. So I think it depends. It needs to be an ebb and flow. Right now, we're backing off the wars of Iraq and Afghanistan, one of which I served in. And, we need to make sure, like I said, we keep thinking about those channels. That's the number one thing we need to do.
I guess my question that I have is, and don't worry, I'll stop, see all the plenty of time. The question is, do you think that at the current overall level of spending, we can meet that need by adjusting the budget, or do we need to increase it or decrease it?
I think we can get rid of a lot of driveways and abuse. And like I said, once we attack this crony capitalism down there, and a lot of folks worrying about their careers, I think we can take that one and say from that, give it to the troops, keep it the same.
Thank you. Same question, 1 minute to Jim.
You know,
Is the overall question of the overall amount of spending on defense?
well, unfortunately, I have to answer that question by saying it depends. You know, the most expensive thing that we do with our military right now is deploy them and send them into battle in conflicts all across the world. Unfortunately, we're in a situation right now due to inept leadership or lack of leadership by President Obama, supported by Representative Ann Custer, that there are danger spots erupting everywhere in the world. We all remember the supplemental budgets last time under the Bush administration. That's because we were deploying troops and we were fighting wars. The best way to cut the defense budget is to make sure we have a strong defense posture and strong foreign policy so we don't have to deploy troops.
Thank you very much. And let me have 1 minute, 2 minutes, 1 minute, same question.
Much like the budget process we have here in the state of New Hampshire, I think everything should be up for review and everything should be under consideration. That being said, when it comes to the defense budget, as I said earlier, I think our national defense and our strong military is in fact, should be one of our most primary focuses and things we support in. That being said, within the defense budget, I'm sure there are many efficiencies one can find, and particularly when it comes to the procurement process as it is, I know that we're spending much more than we necessarily would have to if we allow more people to compete for RFPs and projects. So, I think we need to be looking at everything, but certainly defense spending, making sure it's funded appropriately should be a priority.
Thank you. Thank you.
When was the last time you fired your gun and what did you fire it at?
That'll be a 1 minute response. We'll let Jim go first on that.
Unfortunately, I've been very busy on the campaign trail, so last time I fired my gun was almost 2 weeks ago, and I fired it at a target.
Well, I'm doing the follow-up. What weapon, what distance, how did we do when we killed that?
Well, it was a .357 Magnum, and it was 25 feet, and we had a very tight grouping.
Very good. Same question, 1 minute to Gary.
I believe it was about 2-3 months ago, the National Fish and Game Association, it was a 45-70, and it was a 100-meter target. That's my gun of choice for deer hunting. So, go model 45-70.
Thank you. Marilyn, the same question, 1 minute.
I have a rifle that I won at an NRA raffle. I actually never fired it. But the last time I did fire a gun was at the Pelham Rod and Gun Club, and I fired an Uzi, an M5, an M4, a Glock, and one other gun I can't recall what it was. But they're amazing machines.
Thank you. Gary?
What limits are there on the Second Amendment? Are there weapons that citizens should not be allowed to own?
And I think this will be a minute each, and Marilyn, the first one.
The Second Amendment is a right that is very clearly enshrined for us in the foundational documents. It says that we have the right to bear arms as American citizens, and that to me means we have the right to bear arms to protect ourselves, our property, and our family. And that is clear as can be. So I think, the primary responsibility of an elected official is to be sure that we're upholding that right. Beyond there, we have a lot of laws that relate to guns and firearms, and as usual, there's always a reach after national tragedies and incidents. There's always an effort that's reactionary to try and clamp down on this, that, or the other when it comes to firearms, and for the most part ends up infringing upon the rights of law-abiding citizens. So I think that's very unfortunate, and my first duty is to be sure that I'm protecting our Second Amendment rights.
Thank you. Same question, Gary, 1 minute.
Well, I am a life member of the NRA. I've been a life member since my 20s. Owned between 15 and 20 guns. Shoot a lot, hunt even more when I can, when I'm not running for Congress. But I believe that all weapons that are legal right now should be made legal. So I hope that answers your question. I don't believe in limiting a person to a weapon that the government decides he should have, he or she should have. Because it feels they need a pistol to defend themselves, and that's what I have next to my bed. Is a Colt 45, 1911. If you want a semi-automatic weapon with a 30-round magazine, then be my guest. If you feel more comfortable with that, and especially what you feel comfortable with your family, then that's what you should have.
Same question, 1 minute, Jim.
I took an oath when I first entered the military to support and defend the Constitution. I don't believe the Constitution is up for debate. I do believe the Second Amendment affords the citizens of the United States the right to bear arms. And I do not believe that it's the place of the government to question that and abridge that right. I am a lifetime member of the NRA. I'm an avid sportsman. I've been a member of the Pelham Fish and Game Club, where Maryland did fire their Uzis. So I will do everything in my power to support the Second Amendment and every other amendment and article of the United States Constitution.
Just a quick follow-up. There are currently restrictions on certain weapons that citizens can own. Do you believe that those should be repealed?
30 seconds each, and let's do it just the opposite order. Jim, what's your start off?
I believe in the Second Amendment. I do not believe in outlawing weapons because of the way they look. So I would support the right of every citizen to bear arms based on the Second Amendment.
Jerry, 30 seconds.
Let's go back to my original answer, which I I think will answer your question. If it's a legal weapon now, you're entitled to use it, keep it, for self-defense, whatever other purpose you want to do, as long as it's legal, you get to keep it.
And, Mayor, another 30 seconds.
I support illegal use of a legal weapon.
Mary, I think you have a follow-up question, and these will be 30-second responses.
Do background checks and infringe upon one's right to own a weapon.
And Gary, why don't you start off?
Yeah, we do background checks right now. So I'm in favor of background checks that we do right now.
Second question, 30 seconds to Marilyn.
In fact, we do background checks, and it seems again, after every new tragedy, copycat situation, the school shooting, all these horrible tragedies that should not be occurred, the immediate rush is to expand laws and restrict access and infringe upon the laws of law-abiding citizens. I think it's most important that we enforce the laws we already have, because that's where we're lacking.
Same question, 30 seconds to Jim.
I'm the son of a 34-year law enforcement veteran, former chief of police. So I hear a lot and I've heard a lot about this issue my entire life. It's very crystal clear to me that most violent crimes being committed with guns are not committed by law-abiding citizens, and most of those guns are not legally obtained. Background checks currently exist. I will not support any expansion of background checks.
With that in mind, I'd like to ask a follow-up question regarding that issue. What are your individual positions regarding further integration on a national level, both the existing background check system, and particularly including people who have had restraining orders issued against them, and people who have been involuntarily hospitalized as a result of mental health issues? I think that would be a 30-second response, and we'll adjust the opposite order, which I think is we Jim first.
As I said earlier, there are background checks that exist currently based on the current law. I do not believe that it's necessary to have a national registry of the background checks, nor do I think it's necessary once the check is performed to consolidate that information and keep it. I do believe, however, that there is a correlation between mental health issues and some of the tragedies that we've seen. So in response to that, I would recommend targeting that area or that issue directly by providing more support for better identification of mental health issues and providing better options for treatment.
Thank you. Second question to Marilyn.
At this time, I'm not, excuse me, I'm getting over a cold. I am not advocating for expansion of background checks. I think we first, if we would ever consider such a thing, make sure that we are enforcing the laws we already have, be sure that our background checks are thorough, and particularly if there is, within the community or a person, or family, a thought that there is a mental illness problem and that this person may put himself or others in harm's way, certainly that's a discussion that should be had on an individual basis. But I don't think we should be advocating for broader, sweeping gun regulations.
Thank you. Second question, Gary.
So we got a ton of laws on the books right now, we need to enforce them. We need to enforce them, and there's no need for any more. Not only that, we got a mental health issue with respect to these mass killing and violence, whatever. I served for 2 years on the board of the Greater National Mental Health Center, so I've got some experience with those issues. I was the chairman, actually, of the Veterans Subcommittee on that. And we've got to deal with mental health. That's what we've got to do with mental health and violent people getting guns or whatever, and then issuing that they get to do that. But as far as the laws, we've got enough on the books already.
Thank you. Next question, please.
Some people have said that the United States, by not investing government funds into the development of alternative energy on an equitable level with other countries, may be missing out on what could be the manufacturing jobs of the future. What should be the government's role in encouraging that alternative production of energy and manufacturing jobs, scientific research jobs that could come from that industry?
2 minutes, and Jim will take us on.
You know, that's an interesting concept. What I find interesting about that is the fact that even though the state of New Hampshire is currently an electricity exporter, we have very high electric rates. Lo and behold, as I researched this issue, what I found was one of the reasons why our electricity rates are so high is because we have a mandatory energy for renewable energy. We have a mandatory government subsidy for renewable energy plants. We're paying these extra high electricity rates right here in the state. And that's a prime example of why the government should not be straddling the taxpayers or the people of the state with these big government programs. It's got to stop. We can't keep breaking the backs of the citizens because the government thinks it has a better idea. I would be opposed to those types of programs unless they can show to me that it's not going to negatively impact the economy of our state and our country.
Thank you. Same question to Gary.
I don't see the government's role in that at all. In fact, I question the reason why we have a Department of Energy. I mean, I believe in a free market economy, and I believe free markets need to determine the cost of everything and what we drill, what we do, and how we manage our energy. And the Keystone Pipeline. Let the public, let that go into the public domain, and we can have competition, we can create jobs, we can create energy, we can be energy independent. But I don't see a role for government in that. That's a role for private enterprise. They can do it best. They can bring prices down the best. When the government picks winners and losers when it comes to energy, I can tell you what's going to happen then. Your energy costs are going to go up. So, get government out of the way, let free enterprise rule, and you watch the cost of energy go up.
Thank you. Same question to Marilyn.
Yes, I think it's curious that we would be considering investing taxpayer dollars through a government administered initiative to produce energy when in fact the private market is raring to go at that. We mentioned the Keystone Pipeline. There are all sorts of other projects, be it horizontal drilling, the possibility of shale, natural gas pipelines under consideration, fracking, all of these things, and coal. All of these ways that America has found to develop and produce energy, and things we're still looking to do. What I hear when I talk to people that are actively involved in this industry and others in the world, they say, in fact, the government is preventing us from developing and creating jobs and working to make the U.S. energy independent and bring costs down for Americans across the board. So the first thing we need to do is be sure the government isn't being in the way of the progress of the free market and private development before we should ever consider investing in it.
I have a follow-up question for all three candidates that might not be on the screen. But in light of your responses in support of a free market energy policy, what is your position on the Northern Pass project, and should the government be involved in any way in limiting how that is either implemented or not?
30 seconds. And we'll do just the opposite. Marilyn.
It's under the purview of the government right now. What I hear when I talk to people in foreign countries, they're concerned about private property, and they're concerned about the diminishment of the aesthetic quality and the economic engine that is tourism in the region. So the proposal and compromise I hear offered is very new transmission lines, and if people in foreign country are amenable to that, that sounds really good to me.
Same question to Gary.
I'm opposed to Northern Pass, and if the folks send me down to Washington, I'm never going to stop fighting to make sure there is no Northern Pass.
Can you just further clarify?
Well, first of all, having been to the North Country numerous times, in fact, part of my wish is I could live there, since I am a hunter and a fisherman, and I really enjoy the scenery, and I understand what those folks mean about the pristine nature of the North Country. To have towers going to the mountains, and if you expect tourists to come up and wake up at their campsite and look around and say, wow, I think I'll come back, that's just not going to happen. That's going to adversely affect the economy of the North Country, and I've been opposing Northern Pass and will continue to advocate for the demise of Northern Pass. Send the comments.
Thank you. Same question to the
You know, in my past, I've been a professional ski instructor, so I've spent a lot of time in the North Country of the state. One of the things that I find interesting about this project is the towers that they're proposing for this are much higher than any other towers that exist in this state right now, well above the tree line. Unfortunately, we have a project here that's being proposed that will damage the landscape, damage our tourism industry. I would not be willing to substitute permanent economic gains from tourism and permanent economic jobs from tourism and substitute them for temporary infrastructure jobs. And I said earlier, we're an electricity exporter, so why are we damaging our state, hurting our people in this state for electricity that's going to go elsewhere? I will not support Northern Pass.
Thank you. I'd like to ask a follow-up question regarding taxes. Do you believe there should be any changes in the Internal Revenue, particularly on the corporate tax level, and if so, why? And I'd like to propose that we make responses a minute each, and we'll start with Gary.
Thank you. Yes, the answer is complete yes, yes, and yes. I am a small business owner. My wife is a small business owner, has her own separate business. What we have to go through, and what a lot of the folks in the audience have to go through every year, filing taxes, is horrendous. I've got to pay lawyers, I've got to pay accountants. It's insane. I could put another person to work for the amount of money I have to put into that. We need a fairer, simpler tax system. We ought to have the kind of tax code, if you want to call it, that you can fill out the tax return on a postcard. Why can't we do it? I mean, maybe if we do it that way, we don't even need the IRS anymore. But, I mean, that's what we need. And that's what folks want. And I know that, whether you're a business owner out there or you're an individual, you're feeling the same way. It's out of hand, it's out of control.
Thank you. Same question, Marilyn.
Sure. I have to say I'm a little confused by his responses. In fact, I'm a strong advocate for closing of corporate loopholes, and he attacked me on a recent mailer for that specific proposal I've been advocating for. I think closing corporate loopholes and also reducing the corporate tax rate so that it's more in line with other industrialized countries. We have the highest of all the industrialized countries. Would be a huge step towards tax reform. What I think Senator Lambert didn't understand about what that really means to close these loopholes, it doesn't in fact put money back in the treasury. It would go back to the taxpayers because we would be reducing the overall tax rate. In addition to closing loopholes that only big business and those with a huge lobbying arm can afford to advocate for. We need to be watching out for small business, medium-sized business, and individuals. So that's the type of tax reform I've been advocating for, and that's called revenue neutrality. That's when we close loopholes and reduce the overall rate. So just to clarify, if any of you got his mailer that called me out and said I wanted to raise taxes by a ludicrous $150 billion, I in fact was the one advocating for closing loopholes and reducing the corporate.
I assume I can respond. Since attacked. That was attacked.
Patience. Let's let Jim have his response first.
I'm a small business owner. A small business owner of a corporation, which I find that's interesting hearing that my colleague, Representative Garcia, saying she wants to close loopholes. Last time I checked, the IRS tax code doesn't distinguish between small businesses that are corporations versus large. Maybe if we had more representation down in Washington, people who actually experience these things, small business owners, people who actually had the opportunity to live out on the economy, own their own home, have the experience that they have, the life experience that they need to make these kinds of decisions. Washington would make better decisions for all of us.
Thank you. Gary, 15 seconds.
Thank you very much. When you close a loophole, guess what? Revenue goes up, right? That's called a tax increase. Loopholes such as research and development, tax credit being for businesses that create jobs, that means the taxes go up.
Revenue neutrality means they do not. That's the Reagan-O'Neill bill that passed in 1986 and accomplished just that.
Sounds more like the O'Neill bill.
I have one comment to that. When Representative Garcia's comment regarding loopholes, she had no solution for lowering the tax. She talked about closing the tax loophole.
That's
And that was that. And not only that, the same organization that rated me on that, also rated one of Representative Garcia's ads run on her behalf by a special interest group false. But I didn't see her calling for the removal of that ad, at the same time.
I don't,
Gary, go ahead.
yeah, sure. I don't know what you're referencing about my ad, but in fact, your hometown newspaper, the Nashville Telegraph, and the New Hampshire Politicat, said that your claim that due to my stance on closing corporate loopholes and reducing the overall corporate tax rate, as I mentioned, if you accuse me of wanting to raise taxes by $150 billion, you and President Obama are the only two people in the history of the Hampshire Politicat to get a pants on fire rated for the blatant abject lie.
Well, you know what? I'm glad that my colleagues here are willing to argue about the campaign ads. This is one of the reasons why I felt like I had to get into this race. We need to start talking about the issues that are relevant to the people of the state. Stop bickering about campaign donations and ads. How do you stop?
With that in mind, since he did it in 14 and a half seconds, so we said that I did time right, I'll give that to you, Gary.
Thanks. I didn't know Representative Garcia was a big fan of the National Telegraph. The Office of Management and Budget said those loopholes are called tax expenditures. Guess how much they amount to? $148 billion. You can look it up. So the math is there, the facts are there, and I stand by my fact. You can't have it both ways on proof.
I believe that Sarah has the next question.
We're moving on to immigration. Are we being perhaps penny wise and pound foolish to focus our spending on immigration controls on a fence, or boots on the ground, or more patrols, or drones, or any of these solutions that would be at our border, when perhaps helping Central American countries stabilize their own democracies and get gangs off the streets might stop the tide of people who are flowing to our border in the first place? What role should the U.S. play in the violence occurring in Central America now, in stopping the violence?
Show me the response of that, and we'll start off with you.
You know, it's a good question. You know, I think the only affordable solution is to control the immigration crisis right now. The cost of the country right now is exorbitant. You know, Australia had a similar situation to this not that long ago, where they had an open immigration policy because they felt a moral desire to help the world. They learned very quickly that they weren't going to be able to afford to do that as immigrants rushed into Australia. They've changed their policy now. Their policy is if you come here illegally, you will never get to stay. We need to adopt that policy as well, because let's face facts. Until we secure our borders, until we address the issue of immigrants coming across the border illegally, we'll never be able to get a handle on the situation and solve any of the additional problems, like what to do with the illegal immigrants that are here now. That's why my first order of business, if I'm elected to Congress, is to push for a solution to secure the border now. Finish the fence, augment the border patrol where necessary, use the National Guard if required, utilize electronic countermeasures as well, secure the border, and no amnesty, because we cannot allow anybody to think that they can come here illegally and they're going to get to stay.
Gary, same question for you.
A lot of folks kicking the can down the road in Washington. To me, it's simple. We've got to secure the border. We can do it with fencing. We can do it with aviation assets. We can do it with boots on the ground. And here's the other thing we've got to be clear on. No amnesty. This is where I've been loud and clear on the issue, and Representative Garcia, I know goes next. She's going to claim she's opposed to amnesty. She's been for amnesty. She's got a written record. I think we got the resolution here today. We can read it if you want. The National Hispanic Caucus for State Legislatures. Representative Garcia is a member. She sponsored a resolution that called for legalizing the undocumented population. Now, if that's not amnesty, I don't know what is. And she's also been a member of a board called Americans by Choice. Guess what they advocate? The Senate Gang of Eight, the Democratic Senate Gang of Eight plan, and the President's plan for amnesty. There's nothing in that website about securing the border. And by the way, Representative Garcia, you were only one of 2 Republicans, 12 Democrats signed that resolution. 2013, TAC 11, National Hispanic Caucus for State Legislatures.
I give you 2 minutes to run it.
If you spend more of your time talking about your own immigration reform ideas instead of looking at these spurious claims about mine, you might be getting somewhere. You just said, if that's not amnesty, you don't know what is. Well, I can explain to you the difference because anyone that's serious-minded about immigration reform understands that the first priority is establishing and being proud of our national sovereignty. That has to do with protecting and securing our border, which I've always advocated for. That secondly has to do with being sure that the rights of American citizens are first and foremost, and that the rights of those that have gotten in line and are going through the immigration process the correct legal way are next. Those that came into this country illegally should not be granted citizenship. I've never supported amnesty. I haven't supported executive amnesty that the president is currently proposing based on this new humanitarian crisis, as he calls it, on the border. So I have not supported that. What I have supported, and what this speaks to in the organizations that, frankly, I'm one of the few Republicans on there because I'm trying to expand the dialogue. I think it's important that, liberals have owned this issue for too long, and it's about time that Republicans and conservatives lended a voice to the cause. So what I've advocated for is being sure that we understand that on the margins, you have citizenship, and then you have, which is amnesty, and then you have deportation. But in between that, there are many reforms that are actually specific, that are realistic, that are pragmatic, and have to do with conferring some sort of legal status on approximately 12 million undocumented illegal immigrants we have in our country right now. Legal status means we'll be pulling out the shadows so we know who they are, what they're doing. If they're participating in our economy, they ought to be paying taxes. If they've committed crimes aside from coming here illegally, they ought to be immediately deported. So that's what legal status and legalization in these terms mean. That's not amnesty. And anyone serious about achieving reform when they get to Washington needs to understand that distinction.
Could I just have a last thing? I mean, I kind of was attacked again.
Well, I don't know anyone was attacked, but I think we have enough time to let you each have a 20-second response. Let's start, do it in the same order we did it with, and we'll start with Jim.
Representative Garcia, I'm not quite sure I understood what you said there. But it sounded personal. Look, I stand by my original assertion. How can we pretend like we can solve a major issue like immigration and we keep kicking the can down the road, allowing the situation to continuously get worse? We have to secure the border first. It has to be the first order.
Go ahead, Gary.
Thank you very much. Well, Representative Garcia said it all. Liberals are owning the issue. She's owning the issue. That's right. She claims that legalization is not amnesty. I'll leave it up to the audience to decide that that is the definition of amnesty. Thank you.
Even those pursuing citizenship by the appropriate legal route have legal status. They are not citizens. So there's a huge difference there and a distinction. And again, if we're talking about actual reforms to immigration, it's important that we as conservatives be engaged in that debate, that we aren't afraid to stand up for our national sovereignty, and we're willing to look at reforms between those two margins I talked about to make sure that we are on the route to real reform.
Yeah, I think you got the next one.
It has been reported that under the Obama administration, there have been a record number of illegal immigrants deported. But nonetheless, the administration's policy has been to allow immigrants due process in court to determine if they are a victim of human trafficking or has another reason for asylum. Do you disagree with that process?
45 seconds each, and we'll start with Marilyn.
That was a result of an effort that distinguished between those from South America and those from Central America, and it was an effort to be sure that those that might be coming here not of their own volition, sex trafficking and those types of horrible things, that due process be in place for that. So the issue, again, is always when the government acts, there are sometimes very serious unintended consequences. And that's what we're seeing right now, in addition to some laxity of enforcement of our immigration laws.
Thank you. Same question.
Can I just have a second? I think it was sort of a yes or no question, though, whether or not you agree with the process that's in place.
Well, I agree that we're a nation of laws, and if we have something that is in process according to our laws, it needs to follow through. Should that be revisited, that's probably something we should do.
Same question, Jim.
You want a yes or no question? No. I do not support Barack Obama's current policy of granting administrative amnesty. He did not have the authority to do that. He did so via executive order and memos, and that's not acceptable. We have a lack of government accountability right now, and we need representation in Washington that's going to hold the president and everyone else accountable.
Thank you. Gary, same question.
This just seems like a symptom of Congress, and I'm not a career politician, so maybe I don't understand this, but why are we always talking about something other than what really needs to be done, which is securing the border? Everybody always wants to convert to another issue. Secure that border. It can't be that difficult, like I said, with fencing, boots on the ground, aviation assets, and we get the clear message, no amnesty, and then we'll deal with all the other issues. But that's the first issue we've got to deal with, period. That's the issue I'm going to deal with, Senator Congress.
Thank you. I'd like to ask a follow-up question, Greg. Let's assume that you were elected, that whatever your standard is for having control of the border is met. What, if any, changes to current immigration law do you believe should be made? 1 minute each, and we'll do the opposite order. We'll start with Gary.
First of all, what I may have mentioned this, may not have mentioned it, this is near and dear to my heart. My mother is a legal immigrant. She worked extremely hard to come here after World War II. It was very difficult to come here, stay here, and that type of thing. But what I will do is, once again, I hate to go back to my original amendment, but everybody wants to talk about everything but border security. I want to talk about border security. I want to talk about foreign amnesty. I want to talk about what this president's about to do and the executive amnesty out there.
And Gary, I think the question that I'd like to know is, assuming that we've got control of that, do you think there ought to be any change in our existing immigration laws?
At that point, if we secure the border, I am willing to have a discussion about all folks that are illegal here. Let's find out who they are, how many there are, what it's going to cost to, move them back to the home country, whatever we got to do. But until we secure the border, we cannot have that discussion.
Thank you. Jim, same question.
Current law currently treats children from Canada and Mexico differently than children that come through our border and come into our house. This is something that has to stop. If I were elected to Congress, my first order of business would be to make sure that the law was changed so that children were treated equally and the same, regardless of their country of origin.
Thank you. Same question, Marilyn.
Seeing as Senator Lambert just endorsed my position, which is that if you're to know what that illegal population, where they are, what they're doing, some sort of legal status needs to be conferred. So
I never said that, and never will.
No, you don't have to. You choose to, Marilyn. Go ahead. Well, that's the third, but that's different. Go ahead, Marilyn.
Legal status is the way we identify who they are and what they're doing. And again, put them on a particular path, which of course is what is up for debate when it comes to reform. Beyond that, there's our visa process. I've been talking to people from, the low-skilled workers, high-skilled workers. We have
could. I don't want to cut short on the closing statements. If my math is correct, as much as I've got that 13,000 that I'm about to ask, I will restrain. Our closings tonight will be 3 minutes each. And as I told the candidates, I would do it totally by as much of random event as I could. And we'll start with Jim.
You know, I want to thank you all for coming out today and hearing us today, because I think this is a vital part of the electorate process. You know, at age 17, I left my home to go to the United States Air Force Academy. I served on active duty for almost 7 years. By age 25, I bought my first home. I started my first business at age 30, and by age 31, I was elected to the New Hampshire State House right here in New Hampshire and served 3 terms in the state legislature. Everywhere I go across the state, people tell me they appreciate the life experience that I bring and the type of life experience that I will bring to Washington if I am your congressman. Let's face facts. It's time to get serious now. One candidate on the stage does not have the life experience to relate to the average voter in the state. One candidate on the stage has not gone through the normal course of adulthood of buying their own home, having a family, making educational choices for their children, paying college tuition, being in the workforce in the open economy and starting a business, creating New Hampshire jobs. These are things that are important to me. I started off by saying I'm a proud father of 8 children. I have grave concerns about their future and the future America that they're going to inherit. President Barack Obama, supported by Representative Ann Kuster, is destroying our country. Ann Kuster, President Barack Obama's self-proclaimed biggest supporter, voted with him 95% of the time. And I want to run for Congress to replace her so that we can get someone who votes for the people of the state. I want to run so that we can win back our options for health care, our options for education, our prosperity by cutting government over-regulation and over-taxation of our small businesses. I want to hold the government accountable for issues like the IRS, the Veterans Administration, so that they never happen again. And if I am your nominee, I will defeat Representative Ann Kuster, and I will win back our state from the federal government, and I will win back New Hampshire for the people of New Hampshire. Thank you for having me today.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate all of you that have come here to listen to us and those of you that sponsor the debate. I always appreciate an opportunity to communicate not only about the issues at hand, long-term, that are facing our country right now and those to come, but I also appreciate having the opportunity to communicate with potential voters so that they can understand what it is I'm advocating for. I don't begrudge either of the other 2 opponents their relative age or, their experience in life. They're free to choose their career as a lawyer, a government contractor, respectively. They're happy to live, with their families, as I'm sure they do. I do the same. I only have to offer my judgment, my experience, which has been 4 terms in the state legislature, where I have sought to achieve regulatory reform, to reduce the size and scope of government, to keep your taxes low, and I'm just advocating on what I hope will be a broader stage to fight against what I think is one of the greatest threats facing our country right now, and that is the complete breakdown of trust between the governed and the government. We're at a point when we have evidence that our elected officials have actively tried to deceive us. You can look at the IRS scandal, you can look at the aftermath of Benghazi, you can look at Fast and Furious, you can look at the VA, and then of course Obamacare. It's one thing to debate policy, but when your government officials lie to you and try to sell you something and voice upon the American populace, something based on false premises and lies, that's a big problem. Our current Congresswoman claims to be one of the strongest supporters of the President in all of U.S. Congress. I think that's unfortunate because I don't agree with the direction this administration has taken this country. I would seek to be a voice. I've adopted as my motto, opportunity for all, and that's because I want to be sure that this country ensures equality of opportunity for each and every American. We've offered that to all generations that have come before, and
opportunity to serve my country and defend the Constitution, as I did for 35 years, or actually over 35 years, in uniform as a U.S. Marine. You know, I've been serving my country since I was 19 until just 2 months ago. The reason why I'm running for Congress is because I don't see a lot of service going on down in Congress. I see a lot of career politicians, people that want to be career politicians, putting the country, putting themselves ahead of the country. And I tell you what else I see, a lot of special interest groups taking interest in career politicians that want to influence them so they can take care of their interests rather than the country's interests. Now, as I mentioned, I'm a small businessman. My wife is a small businessman. I always wasn't a small businessman. I worked for minimum wage at McDonald's when I was a kid. I worked in a meat market. I worked in a textile, and every time I go to one of these manufacturing plants, I remember the smell of grease, oil, and the noise of machinery working. And I got to tell you, Washington, D.C. has forgotten those people. They've forgotten the guy that worked in McDonald's. They've forgotten the guy that works in the mill. They've forgotten the small businessman and women on Main Street. And I want to go down there, number one, like I told you, I'm going to deal with this immigration problem. We're going to secure that border. We're not going to deal with these ancillary issues. Secure the border, no amnesty period. I'm going to take care of veterans. We're the 5th highest veteran population in America here in New Hampshire. I'm a veteran. You belong in the VA and you want health care? Well, I'm going to fight to make sure you get it in the city or town that you live in. All right? Not so you have to go somewhere out of state or 50 miles or whatever distance. It's nonsense. We're going to reform the VA. I'm going down to review Obamacare. You know why? Because the folks everywhere I go want to review. So I'm going down there to serve. I'm going to ask for your help tonight. I ask for your vote. September 9th is the primary. Please remember me, and thank you very much for coming out tonight. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to thank you very much for attending. For those who are listening online or on the webcast, thank you. We'd like to thank all members of the panel and the readers of the Connecticut transcript for sending in questions. Ladies and gentlemen, your candidates for the 2nd Congressional District, on behalf of the Grand Old Park. Thank you.